double cold open.
So, I don't know if people can hear my baby crying in the background. But this is going to be our first produced video with a producer.
Well, second, technically.
Well, second. So, we actually recorded a whole episode on Star Wars that's never going to be seen. It's going to be like the last episode.
Honestly,
I guess that's a little my fault, but
I think we should play it. I think we should just upload it for
just let them see
But
it.
did the computer at least record any sound?
No, there's no sound.
There's no sound at all.
It's just like
Just the theme music.
Oh.
Alright, let's go ahead and hit to the theme song, Preston. Welcome to this week's episode of Still Living Podcast. Once again, it's your host Tim with my co-host Andrew Ridio.
Andres.
And we are actually joined this week by our awesome friends. We have Chris Long from Oklahoma.
What's up, guys?
And we have Joey Anderson. He's stationed in London lately.
Hello.
See, our producer pointed to that camera and you were looking at that.
See, I don't know this little thing.
Take your cue from the producer.
The point of having a producer is to look at the camera that he points to.
Hello, mate.
And like I said just now, we actually have a producer now. This is our first produced show, like real show.
What's up, guys?
Hey Preston, how's it going, dude?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Okay. Is your face in the box right now?
Yeah, it is. I'm right here.
Right here. Say.
I'm right below you guys.
So Preston's going to chime in if we need to be fact checked because, of course, it's really important for Andrew and I to not be producing fake news.
Because facts don't care about your opinion.
That's right. Can you fact check that quote, by the way? Because I don't think that's a true quote.
What is it?
Facts don't care about your feelings.
I think it should be facts don't care about your opinion.
All right, then.
That's your
Fake
opinion.
news. Fake news.
That's a great opinion.
Fake news is the bedrock of society.
So Christian has been in Oklahoma, been serving in a new church as youth pastor. You've been doing a great job and seeing a lot of videos and stuff. I'm really impressed by the production of the videos. So that's something I really want to learn about what you guys work on, what you guys do, and how you produce them.
Yeah, we have a great media girl. Her name is Brittany Korstjens.
Shout out to Brittany.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Now we should have a new subscriber, right?
She does. Yeah, I don't know her tag, but
Do you know her tag?
no,
I'll look it up while we're
I
talking.
don't. Brittany Korstjens. Look at
You're
her.
not the producer.
Yeah. Oh, look
Yeah.
it up.
We have one girl who does all of our content. She has like a little team of photographers, but she's great. Yeah, cool.
And Joey's been busy at YWAM in London.
Yes, at YWAM London Urban Key.
And you guys have been going to India and Argentina.
Yeah. So far this year I've been to India, Argentina, and Germany.
Cool.
East Germany, the communist area. So it's really interesting.
Is it still communist?
No, it's no longer
I
communist.
feel like that's kind of racist.
It's 20 years later, and you still feel all of the terror of communism.
You're in the
so,
aftermath of communism.
yeah,
Wow.
it's crazy how long an area will stay scarred by communism. So
Interesting.
it's very
Cool.
interesting.
Well, so as you guys know, Andrew and I really like to help people, and that's what this show is for. It's to help people, right?
Through their daily life.
Through your daily life, help you live.
Listen to us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we have, we are sages of wisdom, and
Kind of like Solomon's.
yeah,
Two of them.
right. No, right. I was just thinking
Two
that.
King Solomons.
And
And it's the next podcast.
And so the topic that we're wanting to hit on this episode of the podcast is confrontation, because I know for me, for the longest time, confrontation is literally the hardest part of dealing with other people.
It is.
Right?
Definitely.
Whether it's confronting people at work, confronting people at school, your friends, your relationships. So my question I'm going to throw out there is like how do you deal with confrontation in your own life, right?
Yeah. So, I guess can we throw out an example,
Go
or do you
for
want
it.
to have like just
go. Free for all. Let's
discussion?
go.
I don't know. I think it really depends on the situation for me. There are certain people that it's more easily to confront. Like, family is easier to confront for me than just some random person that's yelling at me. Well, actually, I don't know, because like I like to yell back because I'm a loud guy. But at work, it's more difficult for me for confrontation because you don't want to poison the water well. You know what I mean? Because everyone's there helping each other. And if there's a problem, it's harder to confront that problem at work. You know what I mean? Without even getting the boss involved or anything. What about you guys? What's kind of your...
I think for me, the first thing that I always want to think of before confrontation is what is my attitude adding to this? Is this an attitude, or is this what I want to confront? Is it something that I can change my attitude about? Is it something that, for instance, if somebody's done something that hurts me, is it because they were intentionally trying to hurt me? Is it something that they were just doing and they didn't know that would hurt me? Or is it something that shouldn't hurt me and I have the wrong attitude about? And so when I figure out which way, which is the cause of the pain, then I'm more equipped to confront them in the correct way. Because if it's something that they did that they did to intentionally hurt me, that's something that maybe I need to confront them with a leader or with somebody who I feel is equipped to handle a nice discussion. Because at that point, if somebody's trying to hurt you, there's not a lot of good conversation to happen.
Yeah.
I think if it's something where they weren't intentionally trying to hurt me, it's, hey, I just wanted to ask you something. I noticed this happen, and this is how it affected me. I don't know if you meant it that way, but I just wanted to bring it to your attention that it affected me this way, and I'm wondering if there's a way that we can work this out. Or if it's something that it was just me being hurt about something that I don't really necessarily have business being hurt by, then I change my attitude and I walk away from the problem. And I say, I tell myself, why am I upset? Why am I mad? And then I just continue life. There's not much confrontation when it's me. I confront myself.
Yeah, I think like for me, when we're talking about confrontation, like my biggest thing that I think about is, I like to ask myself, is this something actually worth confronting someone about, or would it actually be more effective for me to sit back and to not engage? Now I think like in confrontation, you should always take a leader with you or someone that you trust, a third party. I think that's like the biblical way to actually handle confrontation. But for me, I think confrontation, the important thing to think about is, am I confronting someone because I want to be a savage? Or am I confronting someone because I actually want to be a servant? Am I confronting to serve, or just to be, because I have pride or my ego, or, they shouldn't treat me that way, or I think it is important to, check the motive of why you're confronting someone. Yeah, what do you guys think?
No, yeah, I totally agree. Like, because you both are kind of saying, first off is to check your motive. Like, why am I offended about this thing? Why is this thing bugging me like this? And then the problem is, a lot of times, a lot of people will just say, okay, well, I'm not going to confront this. Yeah. And then you just let it, like, boils. Yeah. Right?
See, because confrontation, if you do it in the wrong spirit, it can cause damage, serious damage. But also, not confronting something that needs to be confronted can let poison kind of sit, can let a bad situation or a bad spirit kind of sit.
Like fester.
Yeah, and I think it's important to realize we don't battle against flesh and blood. We battle against, spiritual things, principalities. So, what are you confronting? Are you confronting the spirit, the system, or are you confronting a person because you have strife against that person?
Well, and so one thing I'm learning, or I've been learning, is that what you have to do is you have to see the other person is on your team.
Yeah,
you have to look at it that way.
I remember you telling me that.
Because if you feel like the person is against you, then you're going to hit this a completely different way.
Yeah.
Whereas if you say, hey, we're on the same team, we have the same goals, we have the same wants and desires, and if that's the case, then suddenly the conflict is much smaller than you realized, than you first thought it was.
You're both kind of looking at it from the same view.
Right.
And at that point you are, confronting the spirit and the problem, but you're not confronting someone.
Exactly.
And it takes the fear factor out of it too, when you feel like there is something that you need to confront, something you need to handle, because it's scary, confronting people.
Mm-hmm.
Because you practice in the mirror what you're gonna say, how you're gonna say it, how you're gonna do your hand gestures and everything, and how you're gonna tell them off. But then when you get to their face, like, it's scary. It's you start shaking. It's because confronting someone is a terrifying thing. But when you start to look at the problem on their side, it's not as difficult to handle a problem. It's not as scary to handle a problem when you know.
Well, yeah, and this way, it's so much more conducive to the relationship.
Yeah.
Like, here's the deal. If, like you said, if you just want to go savage and just be like, I don't care about other people, I don't care about feelings, I just care about my own ego, then it's going to be really easy to jump in and confront. We've known people like this, these alpha personalities that just has to have everything their way and it's very egotistical. But they're not building anything. They're not building relationships. They're not keeping anything.
Yeah, it's more you're concerned about maintaining yourself or, building up yourself.
Right.
And,
Whereas if you look at it, say, I want to build this relationship, then suddenly you really have to empathize. You have to say, okay, we're on the same team, we're fighting this problem together, we're going to end up together, we just need to figure out how to get over this thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's much more better for your relationship.
Yeah, I think it's a servant's mentality because, as a leader, when you have people who you are responsible for leading, if someone wants to be confrontational with another one of your leaders, or people on your team, that person can suddenly become a problem to the team, So, you have to go about it with the right spirit. You have to. That's why it's important in confronting someone to take a leader with you. That way, you kind of have an aerial view of the problem itself, and you're not dealing with it at the same level of your problem.
Well, okay, so the biblical aspect is when Jesus was giving the Sermon on the Mount, I believe. Or no, it was not in the Sermon on the Mount. Anyway, when Jesus was speaking, he said, if you have a problem with your brother, you go and you speak with your brother first, alone. And then if you can solve it, you walk out with the brother. Is what Jesus said. But if nothing comes out of that conversation, then you bring one or two people, and you lay out your problems, and that way there's witnesses too, is what Jesus says. And then, if that doesn't help, then you bring it in front of the church.
You ever think that a lot of the confrontation that we think we need to have is just us creating a bigger deal?
Yeah.
So like a lot of times in the church, and there is some confrontation that needs to happen, but a lot of times I think it's just we all have this one mindset of how things needs to go. And then when someone else comes with different ideas, that's when we're like, I don't think that you should do that.
Yeah.
And then it spurs the conversation to be like, no, you don't need to do that. You know what I'm saying?
And I think that a lot of the times, like, in leadership, you'll have people who want to share their 2 cents. Well, you need to talk to them about this, or you're going to let them do that, or you're going to let them talk to you that way. And I think that if you get away from that, and like I said, having that servant mentality is super important. I'm having a brain fart right now. I forgot what we were talking about.
Well, so I'll help jump in because I actually had a thought.
Yeah,
so I've been learning that people go through things on a daily basis outside of whatever you're doing. Like I'll talk about work. People go through things at work that they're dealing with their families every single day. They're going through heartache. They're going through hard times, and you don't really see that if you're just looking at what's happening. Right? You see the interactions you're having, but you don't see what's going on the rest of it. So then it causes them to be confrontational with you. So then you want to be confrontational back, but then when you step back and be like, well, what's going on with them? That's causing this.
Yeah. That's why it's always important. It's always important to first, before I bring confrontation, it's always first important to check what's wrong. What's going on in me? What's going on in my attitude towards this person? The hard part for me, though, is not confrontation. I never have a hard part with confrontation. That's never been hard for me. The problem is being confronted.
Really?
I hate being confronted. And it's something that
Interesting.
is so hard for me. It's because I think it's hard to be shown when you have faults, I guess you could say.
I would agree. I think it's difficult for everyone. I don't think it's just a you thing. I think we all struggle with being told that we're doing something wrong. You know what I mean? And when we take it, we a lot of times make it personal.
Interesting.
You know what I mean?
I think in a lot of ways, like for instance, in YWAM, we live 40 people in one house, and of course there's going to be a lot of tension sometimes, and there doesn't need to be tension because we confront each other and are very often, because you have to, otherwise there's always going to be a lot of tension in the house. And so what happens a lot of times is people come to me and they're like, Joey, you talk this way and you say this thing, and then this really affects me. And a lot of times it's culture, and that's the thing. It's like there are cultural boundaries that are cultural aspects that wouldn't affect me the same way as it would affect somebody else. And so when somebody's coming and saying, it really hurt me that you didn't say please, for instance, like I felt like you were ordering me around, that's something that, like, for me, it doesn't seem like an issue. So like my first thing when I'm being confronted in that is, well, you're just being an idiot. But that's not that's not biblical. That's not a good attitude to have. And so then I have to step back and say, okay, like, they're confronting me. Obviously it really hurts them if they're taking this step of talking to me. So what do I need to change? And so
that's good.
So
that's interesting.
But what you say in the moment is what gets me. I don't know what to say.
I think there's times though where you need that telling them. You know what I mean? You need that confrontation that's just like spur of the moment, because sometimes you're led with the spirit. You know what I mean? Sometimes you are, and sometimes what you're saying is right. Yeah. And you don't have to come off negatively. You can come off positively. But I think there is that time where you just be like, this is going to happen. You know what I mean? Because it needs to happen in action at that moment. Whereas if you let it fester or let it go back, you honestly forget about it, or you don't have the words to say that you did at that moment. You think about it differently. Yeah. You know what I mean? I think there's certain times where you need to not necessarily jump on people, but be like, hey, we're doing it wrong.
You know, I think there's a time that comes where you have to be bold, and you have to, like, draw the line, and you've got to speak up. And honestly, I think it's, you know, if you care enough about someone, you're not going to hold back the truth. You're not going to, you know. But at the same time, I have to ask myself, because, like, I don't like being confronted either. I don't like when people confront me and say, hey, you know, you do this is a fault that you have, blah, blah, blah. Because the first thing that runs through my head is, that's none of your business. You know, who are you? You know? And so I think that's why I don't really confront people with their faults ever and say, hey, you do this, then this, and it affects me this way. Because I don't like being confronted that way. And so I ask myself, before I want to confront someone, is this any of my business?
Exactly.
You know?
That's really important too.
And I don't really confront people, to be honest, in that way.
I would
drawing out their faults. Actually,
I think people approach conversations wrong, right? You know what I mean? Because when you start, hey, this is your problem, this is what I'm saying, automatically you put it on the defense, and you're not receiving anything that person is saying.
Well, the way I handle things is, for instance, if I have a problem with you not saying please, I'm not going to say, hey, you need to start saying please. I'm not going to do that. What I will do is I will emphasize on saying please myself. You know what I mean?
You will be passive aggressive.
You'll be passive aggressive.
No, I actually won't. I won't. But I won't preach something to you that I won't practice.
You want to lead by example.
Exactly, because what ends up happening is people just begin to, you know, see how you do things, and they respond like, oh, you know what, that person says please a lot. I don't really, but I should probably say please to them, because that's the way they do it. You know. Yeah. So, I don't know, I just don't really confront people, and you know, I may not say to you, hey, I don't like that you don't say please, but I may say something to you about, I really appreciate when people say please. You know, I really like that. I love when people show gratitude, because it's not passive aggression, it's just speaking truth without aggression, you know, it's speaking truth.
But then you're skirting around the issue.
Not really. Because if you don't get the message, I'll let it go.
I think there's times, like, there's seasons, right? There are times for confrontation, there are times to not be confrontation. There are times to just let things go, right, and not hold on to them. Yeah. So I think something small as please, be like, we need to not probably focus.
I think if someone approached you about saying please, that's petty.
I think
it's different culture too.
It's a cultural thing.
Sure.
It's different. And I don't think it's petty in their culture, so I don't hold that against them. The thing though is, one thing that I always, going along with what you said, it's leadership and knowing my place.
Yeah.
And so there's things that I would confront a colleague on, but there's things that I shouldn't confront a colleague on. There's things that it's not my business to.
Mm-hmm.
So if I notice that they have a certain character flaw, if it doesn't directly affect me, I'm not going to say anything to that person because it's not my place. I just need to pray and hope that their leader notices it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes they do.
They do.
Most oftentimes they do.
People aren't dumb.
Right.
So if it becomes an issue and it's something that then you talk to their leader.
Okay,
Talk to
so
somebody over
we've
that
taken
now.
this conversation at a very organizational level, is what we've been at so far. So now let's get down to more of a relational level.
Okay.
So, it's all good to talk
I agree.
biblically and stuff like that in those kind of relationships, and more of a work relationship or a church relationship. But now, what about your everyday relationships, perhaps family or loved ones, or a spouse in my case, or girlfriend?
I think it changes.
Confrontation is actually, I'm looking back, I think it's probably one of the most important parts of relationships. Because I think mine and Cheryl's relationship has actually grown more out of confrontations than out of almost anything else.
I would agree.
Like, we are closer together because of all the battles that we went through.
Because and especially in a relationship, it's different. Because there's certain things you have to make adamant, right? That you have to speak your mind, because communication is what makes you thrive. You know what I mean?
Joey just mentioned, like, he lives in a house of 40 people. You have 40 people in a house, tensions grow, right? You have 2 people in a house, tensions grow. And the only way to cut the tension is to confront it, to say something or do something, because otherwise what grows is resentment.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Right?
Exactly.
And
speaking from personal experience with us,
Yeah.
we lived together, me, you, Chris, and Jansen.
Yeah.
And a lot of things built up until we finally were like, no, we're meeting.
Yeah.
We're meeting and addressing all of these issues.
Yeah, so I can agree with you on that. I can't speak from like a relationship because I've never had a successful relationship. but I can say that, you know, being in a house with you, Chris, and Jansen, you know, I can say that, I can truly say, and if Chris Cook is going to watch this episode, Chris Cook and I we were not friends, really, until we had a falling out. And we had a confrontation where we were yelling at each other, getting pretty heated, and saying some things that, you know, were on our minds that didn't really sit well with each other. One day we had like this, like, mental fist fight, you know, and from that we became like true brothers because of that. So I think confrontation is good. I think it kind of just scrapes away the surface.
I think so.
You know, I think it just kind of gets down to like, all right, let's just put the facade away. Who are you really?
But
who am I really?
I agree.
Let's reveal that.
Where do we
I think
stand?
it'd be benefited, because even in that situation, like, I finally had to be like, okay, maybe I'm doing things wrong, but the way we're doing, all of us are at fault in the situation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yes, I'll accept my fault.
Yeah.
But we need to work better to improve the situation.
Yeah.
I think it's really important, confrontation. But I think it always goes back to, what can I change before I confront this person?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of times where
You're talking about in your inner self.
myself.
Self-awareness.
What is my fault in this disagreement? What is my fault in what's going on here? Where am I just being stupid?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, where am I being an idiot?
Yeah, I mean, I think in confrontation, you have to have like a healthy level of self-awareness, where you know, like, because you can go in, you know, like I know we're not talking biblically, but in the Bible it says, you know, who are you to point out the stick in my eye with the log in yours? You know, so I think you have to have a healthy level of self-awareness going into it.
I think too, you can't, in any relationship, you can't take out the enemy, because I feel like in every relationship we have, the enemy, if it's a healthy relationship, the enemy is going to try to attack that.
Yeah.
And so you can't take out the fact that the enemy is going to use my weaknesses, my anxiety, what's going on in my head to attack my relationship with Chris.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I see he's doing this and this and this and this, and I think it really affects me. But then I need to step back and be like, no, that's just the way I see it. He's not doing anything that really affects me.
Right.
He's doing, maybe the things that he's doing are triggering something in my past or
Yeah.
triggering something in my anxiety.
But he is not out to get.
But there's nothing
Right.
that
Yeah.
he's really doing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
So
do I need to
confrontation.
confront that?
Yeah.
Or do I need to confront that
The
with
enemy.
somebody else? The saying, hey, I feel this is going on, and I don't think that he's doing it. That hurts me.
Yeah.
I think it hurts something else. I think it's my anxieties. Can you help clarify this? Is
Yeah.
this something I need to confront, or is this something I need to pray about and
Yeah.
be open with myself about? You
I
know.
think fighting is very healthy, especially in like a girl relationship, right? I'm no expert, right? Because I haven't been dating that long. He's an
I
expert
cannot
because he's
attest to
married,
this
right?
at all.
But I think there are certain things in me now that have gone way closer on because we fought about it. Because we both put everything we thought out there, and it's really helped us look at the other perspective. Because when you look at a situation and how you think it should go, because maybe you have that manly pride or something, and then she looks at the situation from her side, right? It really conflicts, and then you put these expectations on these people that cause all this to bubble up.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're fighting over something we don't know we're fighting about, and then we're like, okay, let's chill out.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing, if you're talking about relationships with men and women, one thing that's just always there is there's a miscommunication
Yeah.
most of the time, because women, like,
See things
I
so
always thought I
differently.
was a very, in touch with my feminine side kind of person. I can understand women. I always thought that my whole life, and then I got into a relationship, right? And then I realized, like, how I just miss the ball a lot of times. And a lot of times, like, I'll be doing something, and I'm not even realizing that the thing I'm doing is really ticking her off, or she's reading something completely different than how I intend it to be.
Yeah.
And so I need her to confront me and say, hey, you need to fix this, or we need to fix this. And then it makes things so much more like, oh, we can actually get over this,
Yeah.
right?
But if you let that tension build up and you don't come to a place where you're willing to confront it, then you kind of let something fester.
It
right?
causes you to be like, yeah,
There's there's this strife against this person, this bitterness, and you don't really know why because you haven't confronted it.
and it causes you to be like, what's that one thing that's gonna make me leave?
Yeah.
You're looking for it.
You're
You're
looking
like,
way
yeah,
out.
I'm done with this.
Yeah.
And that's why so many like divorces and things have happened because they don't really confront.
Right.
Confront.
Confront.
Yeah, and like I said, you always have to say, okay, especially like in a dating relationship or a marital relationship, you have to say, we're going to be on the same team no matter what.
Exactly.
No matter what happens
You have to
between
make
us.
that decision, I think,
Early,
prior,
right.
early,
You do.
like at the beginning.
Yeah.
We're gonna be on the same
Well,
side.
that's why love is work, because guess what? You're going to fight with a person.
It's
and
so hard.
And love is saying, do you know what? Even if all this stuff's gonna come between us, I'm gonna love you no matter what, and we're gonna be together. We're gonna work through this together. And so you just have to say, okay, whatever comes up against us it's just that. It's it versus us,
Yeah.
right? It's never me versus you. It's always us versus this thing. And this thing could be anxieties. It could be miscommunication. And
It could
so
be hurt feelings.
it could be hurt feelings.
And I think that's important, like not even just for like man and woman relationships, but just friendships, brothers and sisters in Christ, in the church. I think it's important. That's why it's so important to, like you said, to identify the enemy in this situation. That it's not you, it's not me, that it's a third party and it's an attack. And what that does is that does take away all resentment from me towards you. And it allows me to scrape away the stuff for us to identify what actually is the problem here, and for us not to be, hateful towards each other or have this problem.
Well, and so like for instance, if the problem is miscommunication, then now you're on the same team, and now you can both attack the miscommunication.
Yeah, and you know what this does too is it allows people who normally personalities would conflict. It allows personalities who would conflict to actually work together, and to cooperate. Because you identify the third party that, hey, there are differences here, but we don't have to allow those differences to attack me, and we don't have to allow that to be the boundary between
that helps cross culturally too. So when you're living with, I live with, there's many cultures in my house, and so when you identify things that are cultural rather than personal differences, that's when you're able to say, oh, it's the cultural difference. And so like when I notice something that, like, for instance, like a certain person does that is part of the culture of what they do. For instance, like in a certain culture, like they borrow without asking because that's not something that they really need to do, because what's mine is yours and what's yours is mine. So
Wow.
they'll borrow without asking. And so in my culture, like, you always ask before you borrow.
Yeah.
And so
I can see how that could
I-
be a
That would be
major
hard.
that could be a
conflict,
major
like,
conflict. But
that's
when you bring it up to that person, say, hey, once you think about they didn't do it to hurt me,
No.
they did it because of their culture, you can start to say, okay, that brings the confrontation to a different aspect.
Yeah.
You say, hey, I noticed that you borrowed this, and it's fine if you want to, but please just ask me next time.
Passive aggressively, I would just
Versus-
keep borrowing stuff of theirs. Just like,
Ver-
oh, did you need that?
Versus me coming up to say, hey, what the heck are you doing? Why do you have my stuff?
Right.
This isn't yours, this is mine, don't touch.
Yeah.
You can address them differently. And then that brings them to the realization, oh, I need to change this
Yeah,
because
right.
this isn't something this doesn't allow me to love that person well
Yeah.
when I am doing this.
Yeah.
It doesn't allow me to love them well.
I think that's what it is. I think people are starting with confrontation. You understand what love is.
Yeah.
Love is hard work. Love is the sacrifice portion.
Yeah.
And we don't really understand that without confrontation.
Yeah.
That's why we need it, and that's why it is healthy in some
It
cases.
is.
And so for
I
the
think-
people that come to me and say, hey, you don't say please. That happens a lot, by the way, because I don't say please very often. It allows me to know, okay, this
You're
person,
really-
I really need to work hard to say please every
Yeah.
time I ask them to do something. And so I find myself when I'm interacting with certain people, I say, hey, do you mind if would it bother you to do me a favor? Would you please do this for me? And I mean, even though it seems ridiculous to me, that's how they expect to be asked a
Yeah.
question. So it allows me to love them well
Yeah.
by adding the few extra words that
Yeah.
maybe seem ridiculous to me, but
Mhm.
it allows them to feel appreciated.
That's so cool. Yeah, just thinking about it, like, I think being in a situation where you're mixing with other cultures and cooperating with them, because, like, I think when you're, like, for me, I'm a youth pastor, and I'm working with leaders and volunteers and just different people, and for me, I find it hard sometimes to confront things that bother me, whereas, like, you're overseas, you know, so you're dealing with other cultures on different levels, different, like, major cultural things, like saying please or borrowing without asking. That to me is like a major thing, major difference in culture. So you're learning how to confront things that bother you on something that's more obvious. But I think in, like, my little pool of people, it's harder to confront things that maybe aren't so obvious. You know what I mean? So it's kind of motivating me to work at, you know,
So yeah,
learning my own, how I like things done, or what bothers me, you know.
and so I think in this case, then I think the most important thing for someone who's in leadership is to really develop a culture of develop relationships, right? That's why relationships are so important, and because if you just have a bunch of people under you and you don't really care about the relationship, then confrontation is going to it's going to ruin everything, right? But if what's more important to you is a shared relationship with these people, and you have a shared mission and you're working together, then it allows confrontation to allows you to enter into confrontation and to build something out of it,
Yeah,
and to build
I
something
feel you.
deeper.
that's awesome. What do you got in your mind?
I was just doing Wakanda forever.
Oh.
Wakanda forever.
So I want to thank both Joey and Christian for coming this week. Should I call you Christian or Chris? I've always called you Chris, but
You can call me Chris.
I refer to you as
Instagram.
Christian.
Chris.g.wall.
that's what I was going to get to. So Instagram, what is it?
Chris.g.wall. Chris
Yeah.
Cook. Yeah, Chris me.
And then Joey, how can people find you?
At Joey BA. JoeyBA.
Andrew, where can people find you at?
Mystery Dio on all social media platforms.
D-Town Tim here. We want to thank you again for joining us on the podcast. Of course, you can find us on YouTube, on iTunes, and wherever Google people find their Google things.
Google Play Store, I think.
And our awesome producer, Preston, you can find him at P-Town, what is it?
Piton W.
Piton W.
All right. We want to thank Preston for producing this episode for us.